What's up? I'm Alex, coming to you back with the Stock App version 2. In this new section, we're going to actually be extending the functionality of the app. We're going to add a add stock functionality that allows us to add a stock given the specific element that we want. We can either add or remove, and we will also be able to add new products. So be ready. This is going to be a Strapi plus React tutorial. This is part of the Complete Strapi course that I'm launching literally now. So it's actually available. If you're interested in that, check it in the link in the description. It's going to be available both for Udemy and for Podia. If you do sign up, you'll also be getting a bunch of free checklists. And we may also, if I'm able, I'm also going to do a webinar. I hope I can, because I definitely want to hang out with you and I want to help you build your next application. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy this video. Okay, the next improvement we're going to bring is the ability to add more stock events to a product. So on line 10 to 12, we have our definition for products, fetch products, and on line 14 to 16, we have our fetch stock events. And due to the fact that we're actually getting them through a synchronous request, I'm actually going to delete these. And I'm just going to set them in the state on line 15 as fetch products equal to square bracket and fetch stock events equals to square brackets. So that way we basically get the same behavior. See what's going on. All right, we still have the same behavior, but this time it's always loaded from the backend. So there is no fake data, there is no weird stuff going on. Now, knowing the fact that we're already fetching the products means that our add stock events component doesn't need to get the products, because when you add a stock, let's look at how we do it on Strapi. We basically go on a stock event, we click on plus, and then we choose a type for the type, and then we choose a quantity, and lastly we choose a product. So these are the three inputs that we're going to be creating on the front end as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's open up Atom. I'm going to create a new component called add stock event.js, and I'm going to import add stock event from /components/add stock event, and I'm just going to put it here. And I'm also going to pass the property of products to it, because that way we already have the products. And this will crash because we're not exporting any components, so don't worry about that. Now I'm going to import React and import also component. So I'm in add stock event. We're going to definitely set this up as a class component because we're going to make a synchronous request. So I'm going to import a component and React from React. I'm also going to import Axios because, as I said, we're going to make a synchronous request. And then I'm going to go ahead and define the component. So I'm going to say class add stock event extends component. And then I'm going to export default add stock event. And lastly, I'm going to define a render method, which is going to have a div of class name add stock event because it's my convention. Doesn't have to be yours, but I highly recommend it. Very easy to work with. And lastly, I'm just going to add the name just to show what it is. Okay, and now I'm going to save. I see that I don't have a return statement. That's my bad. Render, and then I need a return statement. So I open parentheses, I command X, and I paste that in. Okay, so now we have our render method showing the stock events. Now, we're receiving the products here, so we're going to get there in a second. But let's think over what we need to do. So what we need to do is we need to select the product. Then we need to add a quantity. Then we need to select a type. And then we need to submit to Strapi. Okay? So that's what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be doing this sequentially. So to select the products, well, we have to select the product, we have to add the quantity, and we have to select the type. So adding quantity and selecting a type will be a static operation. So that's probably what I'm going to start with. And then selecting the input will be dependent on the input. So let's go ahead and do the these first two first. So add a quantity and select a type, because these are going to be our very basic operations. So first thing, we're going to have a form, and our form will have an input of type text, which is going to have a name of quantity, or QTY, and the value of QTY, and I'm going to get there in a second. And then we're also going to have a select, which is going to have a name of type, and it's going to have a value of type, and I'm going to get there in a second. And then we're going to close the select, and inside of the select we're going to have options, and the options are going to have a value of add, and the second option is going to have a value of, I think it's remove, but I don't remember, so I'm just going to look that up. Type of add and type remove, very well. And the value of type add will have an add as a type, and that's what it's going to show, and the remove is going to show remove. Okay, additionally, and clearly this will not compile, but give me a second. Then we're going to have a button that is going to say submit, and I'm going to save. I'm going to see what happens. Clearly doesn't compile because QTY and type are not defined. So we're going to go up here and we're going to define them. So we're going to say const curly braces QTY and type are going to be equal to this.state. Clearly they're undefined, this.state. They're undefined, so there's no data. There can already probably QTY have null because state is not defined. Let's define state. State is going to be equal to QTY, let's say 0. And then, which actually brings up the point that QTY is supposed to be a number, so I'm going to change the type to number. And then the second option will be the type, and type is going to be, let's say, add by default, so we don't have to deal with non-existing defaults. And lastly, we have our quantity. And as you can see, we can't change it. We can't change anything. We can submit, but submitting just does a GET request, so it's not really useful. So what I'm going to do for debugging purposes, I'm going to create a function called handle submit, which is a very common name. And I'm going to write it as an arrow function because I prefer, so I don't have to bind it. And then I'm going to do e.prevent default, because this is the event parameter, so I might as well just type it out. And then I'm going to do what I like to do, which is console.log, the name of the component, then the name of the method, the name of the component, dot the name of the method, then a space, and then what I want to print, such as QTY, and then the value. Then I'll press Command-Shift-D to duplicate, and then I'll also have type. And since I'm doing this, I also need to declare them as QTY, comma, space, type, equal to this.state. So I'm getting those values out of the state, and then I'm printing them out. And apparently we get something wrong because I didn't put an equal sign here. So handle submit equals to a function, the receiver parameter of event, etc., etc. So now this is still not bound because I have to bind it here. So on submit for the form, we're gonna have we're gonna call this.handle submit. So now every time I press, and I'm going to clear the console. Every time I press the submit button, I get this data out, okay? And I still can't change it, but we're going to fix that in a second. So that's that. Now we're going to write a function, and this function I'm going to write is, if you follow my courses, this function basically I write every single time I work with forms, to the point where I'll probably build a library. Like my next project is probably going to be building a input library to avoid having to repeat this code every single time, because it's literally the same code that I write every single time. And it's called handle change, and it's going to be an arrow function that receives a parameter of event. And I guess we can console.log it, but honestly, like I've been doing this a lot. So basically this is what we're going to be doing, and then I'm going to explain you what's going on. We're going to have event.target.name, and we're going to set it to event.target.value. So if I do what I teach, which is console.log, the name of the class, then the name of the method, then the name of the parameter, which is going to be event.target.name, and then I duplicate this line, and then I type event.target.value, and I can duplicate with Command-Shift-D. If you're using code, you gotta press Command, Shift, and down, and it's gonna duplicate it for you. So now I'm printing this out, and I'm gonna have to tie the handle change to the inputs. So onChange equals to this dot handle change, and I'm gonna copy this name and I'm gonna paste it in the select. So let's see what we get. We get a nice exception. Okay, that's cool. Okay, let's look it up. Add stock event. Event.target.name type. Event.target.value remove. So cannot read property value of undefined. On line 15, when it clearly works, cannot read property value of undefined. Because I misspelled target and it's supposed to be target. There you go. Classic, classic spark of genius. So let's try it again. And now, as you can see, the values change and the value changes here as well. So briefly, beside the fact that if you look at the console.log, it becomes fairly obvious. The reason why this works is because we set a name that is equal to the key of the state. And this is something that is very, very, very common in React. So you're probably going to be doing this a lot. To the point where I also create I typically create also an input function called generate input to do this for me. So we have value that is called type, and then we have name that is called type. So if you use this syntax, you can use a variable value as the name of a key of an object, which is it's actually just cool. That's what it is. So I'm just going to show it to you. So if I have a variable which I call my key is going to be equal to the secret whispers whatever okay, invalid and unexpected token because I used the wrong one. So if I have this weird key and then I have an object that has basically that key, and that key, which needs to be in quotes because it's weird, it's going to be have a value of 1, 2, 3. So now if I declare this object as obj and then I write obj square bracket my key, I actually get back that, because my key is the secret whispers. And if I type obj square bracket the secret whispers, that's what I get. So if I use the square bracket notation instead of the dot notation, the string will be replaced with the name of the variable will be replaced with its value, and as such will evaluate. And this is the genius part of doing this. So this is why it saves a lot of time. And now if I press submit, I finally have the proper values in the stock. If most likely I'm going to be releasing either a quick course or some sort of video in which we build an entire UI building library for React. If you're interested in that, subscribe and put a like, or just let me know in the QA or in the comment section what you think. That said, we basically now fixed the UI part. We're just going to have to allow a third option, as we can show here, which is the choosing of the product. So that's what we're going to do in the next part. Now that we set up the dropdowns and the inputs, it's time to set up the quote-unquote dynamic dropdowns. So as we did in the first part, we have this line right here, line 45. We have products, fetch products. So that means that add stock event will basically be receiving a property which we can set in the state, but we don't have to. We actually don't have to. There is got to be called products. So we're receiving a property called products. The simplest way to visualize this is to go in the render method, type in console.log, as I like to do, the name of the component, add stock event, then the name of the method, render, and then the name of the variable, which is, I have no idea what I just did. It's this.props, and then comma space this.props. And let's just see what the props for add stock event are. And as you'll see, add stock event render this.props, it's an array of products. It's basically the products, right? So what we can do with this is we can get them. So we're gonna do const curly braces products equals this.props. So We are object destructuring them. And then we're gonna take the props, we're gonna select the product here, and so we're gonna do input, or rather select, because that's what it is, and then it's gonna have the onChange that we just created, so this dot handle change. As you can see, the code tends to get repetitive fairly fast, and then the name is gonna be equal to product. If I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna look at Strapi. Yeah, this is the name product. Then the value is gonna be equal to product, and we're gonna define product in a second. And lastly, we're gonna have our select, nice select, and what we're gonna do here is we're gonna have a option with value of, let's say, no product or no, and it says please select a product. And then we're gonna do our JavaScript magic. So we're gonna open the curly braces, we're gonna type products dot map product, and since we know it's a JavaScript, we're just gonna have to do this. We're gonna also take I, which is just the iterator, it's the current counter, because we're gonna generate a key, otherwise React shows us the red message, you need a key. If you saw that message, it's just because you need to get that extra parameter, and you need to add it to the key, to the parent element that you're gonna be rendering. So here, the parent element is gonna be called option. I'm gonna get this in a second. And then it's gonna have, as I said, a key, which is gonna be equal to I, and then it's gonna have a value that is equal to product.id, because that's what we care about. And then lastly, we're gonna display the product dot, I'm assuming name, but I may be wrong. Let's open up products and see what we get. Product.name, yeah. All right, so let's give this a shot and save and see what happens. Product is not defined, that's a very common issue. On line 45, that's because we need to define product in state, and it's gonna be equal to no, because that's what we set it to, no. I'm gonna need to add a comma, and lastly, I also need to destructure it from the state. So let's save product. And there we go. We can now select the product, which is consistent with the products that we have. We can now add the quantity, we can select the type, and then we can submit. Right? So the next thing we gotta do is we actually gotta submit. So let's figure this out. Let's go into roles and permissions. Actually, let me summarize. I'm gonna chunk this up just to make sure that you got this. So basically, we created a handle change function that uses the name of the element and then the value to set the value of the state. And then we also used props from app.js, because app.js already loaded all of the products, so that we can show them dynamically. So we call, this is a pattern you're going to use forever as long as you work with React, which is products.map, and then the product, and then display something with the product. And then applying the same onChange on the select makes it so that it all works. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about doing the Axios request. In order to perform our asynchronous request, we first of all need to look up at the endpoint that we're going to need to work with. So let's open up Strapi. Let's go into roles and permissions. I'm going to do public because we're going to do an unauthenticated version. And we have product, find and find one, and then we have stock event, find and find one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the stock event. I'm going to open up the create event for the stock event. Now you can save. I want you to notice that I don't want to have the delete endpoint for the stock event open, because I created the removal purposefully for the goal of not using delete. So if you wanted to revert a stock event, let's say it was wrong or something happened, you're going to have to use the type remove to remove the stock event. That allows us to preserve history. It's very, very important, especially with projects that become massive, that you preserve a history. So this may not be the most optimal. It definitely will not be the fastest way, but it's also the most practical way. And the reason why I like this is because I literally stole it from Bitcoin. That's how Bitcoin works. Bitcoin doesn't, you can't revert a transaction. You have to do a second transaction that goes the other way. That's how it works, and that's why Bitcoin basically innovated the world of digital payments. So I'm just gonna copy from the, I'm gonna stand on the shoulders of giants and take the same approach here. So if you need something that is more fast, right, fast in terms of calculating the totals, then my advice will be to creating a custom endpoint, which is something I talk in the course. You can create a custom endpoint that will be calculating the total by using the function that we already used in the front end, but then you're going to be heavily caching that endpoint by using, for example, Cloudflare. You can just use page routes. This is something in the cheat sheet. So if you didn't get the PDF cheat sheet, make sure to ask me for those. But basically, if you aggressively cache that endpoint, then you will always get the total instantaneously, and then you can keep every other operation as being, touching the actual database. So that's why we don't want delete, we only want the create. So let's go ahead, and now that we open that up, here on the top right, you can see that in post/StockEvents, we're gonna have our endpoint. So for the goal of being complete in this course, I'm gonna show you how to properly debug and figure out how to interact with Strapi by opening up Postman. If you don't have Postman, just type on Google Postman download and you're gonna get it. It's like, this is the prerequisite, being able to download Postman. So now we're gonna make a GET request, or rather a POST request to our API endpoint, which is http://localhost 1337/. The endpoint is called StockEvents, and it's a POST request. The body that we need consists of a type, a quantity, and a product ID. So I'm gonna open body, open row, open JSON, curly braces, type, let's say add, and then quantity, let's say 25, and then product. And this is gonna be the ID, so I'm gonna look up the ID of products. And the first one is called Maru's World. Okay, so now it's product 1. So now I'm gonna send the request, and boom, there we go. We added the new stock event. So now we have 6 stock events. I'm gonna create a second one with 99 red balloons, and I'm gonna add them by pressing send. And I'll refresh here in the stock event, and you'll see that there's an additional stock event down here. So that means that all we gotta do is translate this code right here to React. So what we're gonna do, now that we exactly know what we have to do, we can actually do it. Doing anything else beside this, to me, is complete insanity. I've had students trying to jump ahead and trying to build this through React immediately, and it's just a recipe for failure. Just take the step, take the baby step. This makes it obvious. You can even take this moment of figuring it out to add it to the collection, so that way you can literally debug your application for production, which is something that you should consider doing, having your automated test either through Postman or from some sort of API inspector. That way, you basically get 2 birds with 1 stone, and you're more effective in your development workflow. So let's keep going. I'm gonna remember this code, and I'm gonna use it. And now we're gonna use the handle submit to actually make the submit. So first of all, we're gonna have 3 elements that we're gonna get from the state. One is quantity, one is type, and the last one is product. Then I'm gonna need to check that product is different from no, because we need to validate. If product is different from no, then we're gonna go, else we're just gonna alert no product chosen. And we can literally return alert, or we can just return. That depends on your coding style. I don't mind either option. So that's basically that. And that's the only validation we're gonna be doing. Now the quantity needs to be a number, and it actually is because the input is type number. So that's fine. But the product may be converted to a string. So just to be sure, I'm going to create a new payload. So I'm gonna declare const data, because we're gonna see that data is the name in Access. QDY is gonna be equal to QDY. So you just type QDY and you're good. Then type is gonna be equal to type, because we're good. And lastly, product is gonna be equal to parse int of product, so that we convert it into a number, just to be sure that it's a number. And then what we're gonna do is const stock res. So I guess add stock res, and I like to use underscore when I make a synchronous request. I honestly don't know why. It's probably because we're interacting with the API and I'm a former PHP developer. You can type it as add stock res if you prefer. This is literally me, doesn't have to be you. And we're gonna make an asynchronous request, so I'm gonna use the keyword await, but that means that on line 20 I have to define this method as asynchronous. So now it's an asynchronous method. And now on line 34 I'm gonna do add stock res equals await axios, and we're gonna have a method of post. And now we're just gonna copy stuff from what we typed before. I'm gonna have a URL which is gonna be equal to this one. And as you saw, I used the backticks because I'm used to using those, but we're not really going to need them this time, so I can just turn them into single quotes. And then the third parameter will be the data, and we're going to send the data back. So if this works, then I guess we can type if add stock res dot status is triple equal, or rather, let's say only double equal, because I'm not sure if it's going to be a number, double equal to 200, then we're going to alert. Actually, let's not alert it. We're just going to look it up. It's probably better to, instead of assuming, we're just going to do console.log. Again, handle, or rather the name of the component, had stock event, dot handle submit, and then the name of the variable, and then the value of the variable. So this way you can't get confused by the console.logs that you make. I'm going to copy it sloppily so that I can search for it. I'm going to go in the front end. I'm going to refresh. I'm gonna select my secret. I'm gonna add 90, let's say 678, and I'm gonna be adding them, and I'm gonna press submit. And there you go. We have a request, and it has a status of 200, which is a number. It's not a string, it's a number, so we can use triple equal now. And as you can see, we also get the data back. So now what I can do, as I said, is if the request, which is add stock res, dot status is triple equal to 200, then I can alert success, and we probably will want to refresh the page to force an update, which I think we can do with window.location equals window.location. Let's see if that works. Success, and there we go, and now it updates, and as you can see it works. So now if I remove 1249 from Maru's world by typing minus and then selecting remove, and I refresh, I'm gonna see that I have 0 products because I was able to remove them. Okay, so now we basically figured this all out. If you see this key thingy is because of the same problem that I mentioned, so we're gonna fix it in a second. Actually, let's just fix it on the stock detail. It's doing a map and it's not getting the key, or rather it's not getting the I, and then we can get the key equals to I. And this is just something you have to do with React. It just is what it is, honestly. So that's that. We basically allowed you to add and remove stock. We're gonna turn this into something that is toggleable in the next video. Okay, let's just make this add stock event a little nicer, just to do something a little, just to make it a little better. So we're gonna go on Atom. We're gonna, this is good. So I'm gonna open the add stock event file, and I'm gonna add a new key. And the new key will be show, and it's gonna be set to false. So that means that we're not showing anything. And that means that I'm gonna wrap this thingy, the form rather, around a conditional. So this form, I'm gonna cut it out, or rather I'll show you the conditional first, which is gonna be show and end. So only if show, then we're gonna have the form, and I'm gonna be showing it. So next to here, I'm gonna have the add stock event set to an H1, and then I'm gonna have a button here. So I'll just do actually a space is good enough, and I'm gonna have a button in here, and the button will say add stock event, or I guess plus add, so that you see that that's the button. And then on click, it will have an arrow function, which is going to be equal to this.set state show set to true. And that's that. So that only if we're showing, we're going to be displaying this condition. So let's see, as always, show is not defined. Why? Because we have to destructure it from the state. It's actually a great idea to it's funny because I started recording this video a little bit before doing a bunch of freelance projects, and now I actually like to get this exception, because if I do that, then I will always get the exception reminding me of what I was working on. So I don't even need to remember the name of the variables. So I can just plug them in, and then I can just destructure them later. So it's actually very convenient to get this kind of error. So now when I press add, boom, there we go. We get our form to display. My advice would be to rewrite this with Semantic UI React or Bootstrap, just to make it look a little better. I purposely didn't do that to avoid having to teach an extra topic and just stack layers and throw people off because maybe they didn't really care about Semantic UI or Bootstrap. So let me know if you're interested in me covering Bootstrap, React Bootstrap, and or Semantic UI React, which is the one I personally use the most. I just want to know, I just want to get a feel for the audience. What do you like or not? That said, we basically made the add stock event look better. The next thing we have to do is work on the add product. We would just want to add the product, so let's go ahead and do that. And the way we can add a product, from what I can tell, the product only has a name. So it's going to be fairly simple. Let's first of all figure it out through Strapi. So we're going to go on roles and permission, click on public to avoid having to deal with authentication, and then open up product and click on create. And as you can see, we have post/products. So now it's open, which means that I also need to send a parameter of name. So I'm going to go in Postman, I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm going to go to http://localhost:143/products. And then I'm going to make a post request with a body of type raw, of type JSON, curly braces. The key is called the name, and I'm going to set the name to the course is out. And there we go. As you can see, it publishes. So there you go. It's here. And we're going to basically do the same thing on React applications. So let's open up Atom. I'm going to create a new component called addProduct.js, and I'm going to import React and component from React. I'm going to import Access as well because we know we're going to need it, and I'm going to define it by define class addProduct extends component, and then export default addProduct. And then, as always, we're going to have a render method, which is going to return a div with a class name of addProduct and the text addProduct. And that's that. Nothing changed because we need to include it. Let's go on up.js, and I'm going to import it. Import addProduct from ./components/addProduct, and I'm gonna copy the name, and I'm gonna go down, and I'm gonna post it. And so I'll just post it up here. addProduct will be a component that receives no parameters. So now we have it. There you go. And all we have to do is add a form with an input. So we're gonna have our form. We're gonna have our on submit equals handle submit, which we're going to write in a second, and then we're going to have our input of name equals, in our case we're going to call it, if I'm not mistaken, it's name, yeah, and a type of name, no, rather a value of name. It's going to have a type of text because it's just a text, and that's that. And then we're going to have our button of type submit, or you can also just type button, it's not that important. And submit, or create new product. So now we have our input, and as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff that is broken. So now we're gonna get name from the state, which means that we have to declare it. So let's go on line 6, declare state equals name, and it's an empty string. And then handle submit means nothing. We have to call this.handle submit, and we also have to define it. So I'm gonna call handle submit equals open parentheses event, and then arrow function, and event.prevent default to prevent the submission of the form, and then here we're going to do our async operation. Okay, so for now the input still doesn't change. Why? Because we don't have an onChange. And due to the fact that we only have one parameter, and due to the fact that we already have the function, and I'm going to be covering function reusability in a different video. So all I'm going to do here is just going to set onChange equal to an arrow function that will receive the event, and it will literally just call this.set state event square brackets, because it's gonna need to evaluate that event.target.name is gonna be equal to event.target.value. Now, since I know that the name is gonna be name, I may as well just write name in here, and event.target.value will actually be the proper thing that we need. Can I read property value of undefined? Because I mistyped target again. Literally the same mistake twice. It's a curse. So as you can see, now it works. And we're going to have our event.prevent default here on the handle submit. We're going to set this to an asynchronous operation. We're going to make a request, const create product res. It's going to be equal to await axios with a method of post, a URL that I'm just going to copy from post1. It's http://localhost 133/products, and lastly a data that is going to be equal to name. And name, we need to define it. We're going to get it from the state. It's going to be const name equals this dot state. Okay. So lastly, if, as always, if create product res dot status triple equals to 200, then alert successfully created product. And lastly, I'm just gonna window.location equals window.location just to refresh the page and cause a re-render so that the product is available. So the next product I'm gonna call is gonna be called Mango, and I'm gonna create product, and now it seems like we do have it. So now I'm gonna click on add stock event. I'm gonna select Mango, which clearly is available, and I'm gonna have 100 mangoes, which is said to bring a lot of good luck. So there you go, Mango, and we also have our event. Now clearly you will probably want to separate all of these into separate pages, so I'll actually show you that in the next video. In this video I'm just going to show you how to chunk up these different components and put them in separate pages. The main problem you're going to have with the add stock event is that add stock event as of now requires the products from the props, which means that if you want to separate this into a separate page, you're going to need to fetch those. So I'm actually not going to show you that. I feel like it's just redundant. I'm going to show you how to turn add product into a separate page. And so we're going to have one page called stock events, and then we're going to have a page called products. So that's what we're going to do. In order to have pages, we need to have a different package. The package we need is called React Router DOM. So I'm going to go in inventory front end. I'm going to press Ctrl+C to stop execution. I'm going to press npm I React Router DOM. And I really like React Router DOM. I think everybody does. But also, it's like the default. Honestly, I'm not even sure of what alternatives you have, to be honest, because it's really good, and it does exactly what I need. And I also really like the documentation. I feel like you should definitely check that out, because as you can see, this is all you need to see, honestly. If you have a switch, and it will match only one path, and it will return the component inside of the route, or you can pass the component as a property called component. And that's basically all you need to know, beside having private routes, which is literally the second part of studying this. And then there's details when you work with Redux, but it's beyond scope for now. So I've installed it. I'm going to press npm start. And I know I need a bunch of stuff. I'm going to need the browser router, I'm going to need a switch, and I'm going to need a route. So that's what I'm going to get. I'm going to import, and I'm going to import it here, because these are my components. I guess this is my styles. So I'm going to actually place the styles here, and then I'm going to import here. Import our, what do we need? We need the browser router, which is basically going to allow us to navigate through the HTML5 history interface. Then we're going to have a switch, and then we're going to have a route. So browser router will wrap the entire thing, or I guess we're going to, yeah, I guess I'm going to keep it this way. This is actually, basically this part will not access the history, while everything inside of here would. So I'm going to have browser router, and I'm going to cut this part out. And this is kind of okay if you are working with a layout that doesn't need to know what's going on. Although most people will probably just put the stock app in the browser router as well, because it basically, there's zero downside to doing that. So you could also do that. Development has interrupted. I'm going to press yes to get it to start again. Let's see what happens, which we expect nothing to have changed, literally nothing, except the fact that we have an unexpected token here. So let me see what's going on. Yeah, so on line 4, I typed import browser router switch and route, but I forgot to say that I need to import it from react-router-dom. So that's that. And as you can see, nothing changes. And moving this up and down has zero impact on what happens to the application. So it really depends if you had the navigation, or rather a nav that had to be aware of what's going on, then you will probably put it inside the browser router. Now, next thing we're going to have is a switch. And the switch will be matching a specific route. So I'm going to have a route, and the route is going to have a path. And let's say the path is going to be home. And when the path is matched, we're going to have, this actually solves a lot of problems, to be honest. It's pretty cool. So now we're going to have our add product, for example, in the path called products. And then I'm going to have a second route. So I'll just type it, route path equals to stock, and I'll close the route. And when I have stock, I'm going to show both of these. And so now, when I'm in home, I see nothing. But if I navigate to products, I will have my way to create a new product. And then if I navigate to stock, I will see the stock. And I will also be able to change the stock. So for example, I go to Maru's and I add 10, and I press submit. It's going to add it, and it's going to refresh the page on the same location, and it's going to add it. Okay? So the beauty of this setup, by the way, is that since app is fetching the data, I can actually chunk up the add stock event from the stock events table. The thing I mentioned that I thought would have been way more complicated is actually not that complicated in here, because what we can do is we can cut out the add stock event, and we can add it to route path equals stock/add. And I like this example because it's going to show you a gotcha. Because if I go to stock and then I type add, I actually get the stock again. The reason why I do that is because the switch will return only the first matched route, and the first matched route is /stock. So my two options are to either reorder them and show the more specific route at the top, so that now I'll see it. As you can see, when I remove add, I see the stock. But when I add/add, I see only the add stock. That basically solves it. The alternative is to use exact, which is typically what I do. I typically keep the routes normal, and I just use exact on every route. This is something you can do as well. And as you see, this way we have our app doing all of the heavy lifting, doing all of the loading, and then our separate components are getting these pieces. If you want to extend this, the extra step would be to create a pages folder, and then have a bunch of components that are going to be pages, and the pages will basically have a component that mount and will load this, and then those pages will include the components. But for this specific app, this setup is completely fine, and as you can see, it gets the job done. So now you have a nice stock application that shows you stock, it shows you how to add it, and it also shows you the products. I guess the last thing we gotta do is actually create a menu that allows you to navigate, and then we're gonna be done. So let's do that. I'm actually going to go inside the browser router, and I'm gonna create a menu. So I'm gonna create a menu component, and the menu component, or I guess I call it nav just to include what I want to show you. So I'll basically take the header, the stock app, and I'll actually use that because we're gonna go in nav, and I'll first of all import it just to make my life easier. So import nav from /components/ components/nav, and since I'm taking nav, I probably want to reorder this, but I'll do that in a second. So now I'm going to create a new file called nav, and I'm going to import React from React, and I'm also going to import link from React router DOM, and I'm going to export default. This is basically going to be a function, and as I showed you in the beginning of the previous video, or the previous part in which we worked on this app, you can have a function as a component, or you can have a class. This is basically a function. Instead of typing export default function app or function nav, I'm just writing it as an arrow function, but it's basically the same thing. So this is basically the last way in which you're going to see a functional component written. And I'm going to have open parentheses because I'm just going to immediately return. And what I'm going to return is the title. So I'm going to have a div class name. And as you see, I always need a container that contains the entire thing because the React component, the render of React component can only have one parent element, which will be the div. So if you add h1 and div and other stuff without a parent, this wouldn't actually work. This will break the app because adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in enclosing tag, which means that you just have to have one parent. So if you have all this stuff and you put it inside of this, and don't worry about the formatting, we're going to fix it in a second. But as you can see now, it compiles. And it compiles because you only have one parent, basically. You can only have one parent element or parent container div or a container element. So now we're going to have the stock app, and then we're going to have our links. So I'm going to have a link to products, and it's going to say products. And then I'm going to have a link to StockEvents. Is it StockEvents or is it stock? It's just stock. And so I'm going to type stock. And lastly, I'm going to have a link to stock add stock. And now you're gonna see the link. They don't look really that nice, and we can probably just to get it done rapidly, we probably just put them in paragraphs, I guess. Or we can just add a class name just to make it look a little bit better. Class name equals nav link, and by the way, we're gonna actually change the entire thing in a second, but I just wanna show you a couple of things. Just make it decent. So now it also gets the property of class by using class name because this pretty awesome library. So I'm gonna go on app.css .navlink. They're gonna have a padding of 12 pixels. Right, so now it's half decent, and I guess .navlink .first of type is gonna have padding set to 0, or rather padding left, just so that the alignment is good. Okay, so now that's fairly okay, and we have them. And as you can see, this works immediately. You no longer have to reload the page because app.js is making the request for us. So that actually improves the user experience by a ton. But the thing we don't have is the fact that you don't know in which page you are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change in nav.js, I'm going to change link to navlink. It's going to be called navlink. So I literally just replace the entire thing with navlinks. And what you'll see is that when I go to products, now navlink has a active. So I can, for example, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set that they have no text decoration, but I'm gonna say that the nav link that is active is going to have a text decoration of underline. So that way the one that is active will have the underline while the others will not. And as you can see, this gets the job done and it works. And that's basically it. Now you have a fully fledged inventory stock management application that is fairly solid, extremely scalable. As I said, I gave you a couple pointers on how to improve it even further. And so let me know in the questions anything else you want me to cover. Thank you very much for watching this. Look, if you've enjoyed this video, you definitely have to check out my Complete Strapi course available right now on Udemy. It's also going to be available on Podia if you don't like Udemy. And both of these courses, both of these versions are available in the link in the description. So make sure to click in the link in the description, check it out right now. You're also going to receive free, very useful checklist that tells you how to actually use Strapi in production. So you're going to have cheat sheets that remind you of the most common operations. These are basically invaluable. This is how you get extremely proficient at working with Strapi. This course is super in-depth. The first half teaches you how Strapi works. It teaches you what you can do with it. And then in the second part, we actually build tons of stuff. And for you out there that need help with file upload, I made sure to make an entire section just for you, along with code. And we also deploy to production. So we go from quick start where you have nothing to fully fledged production. So this is all there. It's in the course. Jump in, check it in the link right now. Make sure to subscribe. And thank you very much for watching.